Hello everyone, my name is Joshua Wilkerson and I'm a student at the University of Southern Mississippi. I'm currently in Dr. Eichelman's BLS 401 class and we're doing a research project. My research topic is, do the pros outweigh the cons for police-worn body cameras? And I'm doing this video to discuss the importance of my topic and to discuss what I feel people will gain from learning more information regarding my topic. Police brutality, it's been an issue since police have been policing people, but it has really been brought to the forefront in the recent years of being a concern of being racially motivated. In 2014, we had a Michael Brown incident where he was shot by a police officer. 2015, we had Eric Garner and Freddie Gray, who passed away while being taken into custody or in police custody. And in 2016, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were shot by officers. These incidents were brought as question of being racially motivated in the fact of they were shot because of their race, they were stopped because of their race, and excessive force was used upon them because of their race. A lot of these cases gained national notoriety and were not only covered locally and statewide, but also nationally broadcast in news outlets. State, local, and national government commented on these incidences all the way up to the president and expressed concerns for police brutality and racially motivated policing. With these concerns, they've allocated funds to mandate for law enforcement agencies to apply for grants and funds to equip their officers with body-worn cameras without having to come up and pay for the cost through their budget, or at least fund it fully through their budget. These incidents that I spoke of a few minutes ago, even though they occurred at different times and in different places, they were all recorded by video surveillance or by bystanders who caught portions of these incidences. None of the officers in these incidences were wearing body-worn cameras, so it's unknown what occurred from the time that the officer arrived on scene and their complete interaction all the way until the end where they were shot or taken into custody. In order to do that, the officers would have had to have been wearing body-worn cameras. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to discuss some of the positive and the negative things that I've learned through my research in reference to officers wearing body-worn cameras. For one, just like these incidents I spoke of with the officers, if they would have been wearing body-worn cameras, it would have caught the entire incident. So we would not have to rely on the videos that were shot by the bystanders or just parts of what was caught on video surveillance. You would be able to see the full interaction between the officers and why the officers, and possibly why the officer made the decision to shoot or what caused him to take the action that he did. So that is a positive. Another positive would be video evidence. The officer would be able to record the incidents when he arrived on scene to capture what was going on the scene. It would be able to capture the interaction between the victims, witnesses, as well as the suspects. If they gave any sort of information, they could go back at a later time, review that footage. It would help them in writing a more accurate report as well. Another thing that one of the reasons that it's mainly being pushed is for police accountability. When the police officer knows that he's being filmed or is wearing a camera, that all of his actions are being recorded, he may be more apt to make sure he follows protocol and make sure that his responses and the actions that he takes are appropriate actions. But the accountability factor doesn't just come into play with the police. It also comes into play with citizens' accountability as well. If a citizen knows that they're being recorded and their interaction that they're having with the officer is going to be recorded on video, they may be more respectful, maybe more or less apt to lose their temper or say things out of line. It also helps in a conviction rate, as we just discussed earlier, with being able to record the sentence, record the incident from the time the officer arrives on scene. It's also going to capture what the suspect may say, or be able to show things in real time, not just having to read the officer's report. They can look at the video footage of what the officer's seen, what the officer did, what the suspect did, what the witnesses and victims said that suspect did. So it's inevitable that it would increase the conviction rate. And in a lot of the studies that I was looking at in researching this project, I learned that officers that were wearing body-worn cameras, their conviction rates went up significantly in those agencies. Another major concern for police officers in general, with the interaction of suspects and citizens, is citizens' complaints. Officers that interact with suspects or citizens, if that citizen or suspect felt that the officer acted inappropriately or used excessive force, can file a complaint at that officer. And a lot of times it goes back to officer's word against the citizen's word. But if they have the police-worn body cameras, then they can go back, look at that footage, and they can determine whether or not the officer was right in his actions or the officer was wrong in his actions. And in a lot of these cases, it's reduced citizens' complaints significantly when the officers were wearing body-worn cameras, as well as being able to, if the complaints were filed, being able to vindicate the officer and saying that he didn't do what he was being accused of. So that's some of the positive aspects of the body-worn cameras, but there are some negative aspects that need to be addressed before, in my opinion, before mandating them for all law enforcement agencies. Even though you're going to have some government funding, they're not going to be funded 100%. So some of your smaller agencies won't be able to get those cameras for their officers and fully fund the storage and all the equipment needed. You also have to take into account being able to have a place to store all of the footage that the officers have and keeping it and maintaining it for extended period of times for court cases and for any other reason that you may have. Another concern with that is maintenance and repairs. These cameras they're new, so a lot of them are really they're kind of costly. So the agencies have to be able to repair and fix these cameras in order to have them out there. If you're having to record 24 hours a day, it's a lot of wear and tear as well as a lot of footage. So all that needs to be kind of taken into consideration. When it comes to the media, as we discussed earlier, they released the partial footage, which created a lot of riots and a lot of misconception on what happened of these incidences because it wasn't fully recorded. So there needs to be some sort of mandating that if the body-worn camera footage is released, that they are responsible with that footage and that they play the entire footage for people to see. And that would help them in determining whether or not, in the public perception of whether or not the officer truthfully did something wrong or he was performing his duties and something unfortunate occurred. Another thing with body-worn cameras that I find to be a question of concern is the fact of officers knowing that they're being recorded and second-guessing themselves. There's video footage out there of an Alabama officer who gave verbal commands with a gentleman who had an AK-47. He was loading it and pointing it at him, and he gave him verbal commands. He was being recorded by dash cam. Now, whether or not that came into play or not, he definitely was second-guessing the fact of whether or not he had a right to shoot the gentleman that had a firearm. So I think that needs to be something that is addressed to make sure that the officer knows that if he's acting in good faith and that he is performing his duties to the best of his ability, that he needs to go with his instinct and go with what it is so that he can protect not only himself but the citizens as well. So in the research that I've done, I've learned that there are a lot of positive aspects, are not just for the citizens, but truthfully are positive for the police officer as well. These things, these body-worn cameras are going to help vindicate the officer. It's going to help keep the officer in line, as well as it's going to help him do his job better. The negatives that I spoke of, they are negative aspects of it, but I think that they can be, there are policies that can be written and certain things that you can do to allocate the funds in order to have these police-worn body cameras. So, do the pros outweigh the cons? In my opinion, the pros do outweigh the cons. That is something that you'd have to decide for yourself. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative, and I appreciate you listening.